Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Now, this is one of those things that gets us confused, because we hear this and we think this must be referring to an event that still hasn't happened. But this is very common prophetic figurative language. In fact, even here in this Bible, I've got 2 footnotes to reference here about similar sounding passages. Isaiah 13:10 and Isaiah 34:4. Let's go look those up, and we'll just get an idea of how common this kind of language was in the prophetic oracles. Isaiah 13 is an oracle concerning Babylon that Isaiah, son of Amoz, saw. So it's talking about Babylon. He's not talking about the end of the world. He's talking about Babylon. In verse 10, it says, "The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. I will punish the wicked, the world for its evil, the wicked for their sins. I will put an end to the arrogance of the haughty, and will humble the pride of the ruthless. I'll make men scarcer than pure gold, more rare than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will shake from its place, at the wrath of the Lord Almighty, in the day of his burning anger." Remember the day of the Lord? That's what this is. And when we talk about the day of the Lord, we use this kind of language quite frequently. Isaiah 34. "Come near, you nations, and listen. Pay attention, you peoples. Let the earth hear and all that is in it, the world and all that comes out of it. The Lord is angry with all nations. His wrath is upon all their armies. He will totally destroy them and give them over to slaughter. Their slain will be thrown out. Their dead bodies will send up a stench. The mountains will be soaked with their blood. All the stars of the heavens will be dissolved, and the sky rolled up like a scroll. All the starry hosts will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like shriveled figs from the fig tree." The clearest place in all the Bible to get an idea of the day of the Lord is the short book of Joel. I've covered it. We covered it in our videos a couple years ago now. I suggest you read it again, because it's only 3 chapters long, about 2 or 3 pages in our printed Bibles. And it's very easy to read and go through, and you get a clearer sense of what the day of the Lord is. And at the end of the book of the Joel, he says this in Joel chapter 3, starting in verse 14, "Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, in the valley of judgment, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and moon will be darkened, and the stars will no longer shine. The Lord will roar from Jerusalem and Zion, and thunder from Jerusalem. The earth and sky will tremble, but the Lord will be a refuge for his people, a stronghold for the people of Israel." In chapter 2, he's talking about an army. Talking about an army of locusts, an army of people. How do you compare it? It says, before them, chapter 2, verse 10, "Before them, this army, the Lord's army, the earth shakes, the sky trembles, the sun and moon are darkened, and the stars no longer shine. The Lord thunders at the head of his army. His forces are beyond number, and mighty are those who obey his command. And the day of the Lord is great. It is dreadful. Who can endure it?" And then he immediately goes on to answer, "Even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, and feasting and weeping and mourning." And then he talks about the deliverance of the people of God who repent. So this language that we have here and that Jesus uses is not uncommon in the prophetic language, in association with the day of the Lord. Now here, we're talking about it in terms of the coming of the Son of Man, but that's really just another way to say the day of the Lord. The coming of the Son of Man is a day of the Lord, okay? Because the Son of Man is the Lord, okay? When it said, now they asked him at the beginning of this section, what will be the sign of your coming? And so he's answering that in that term. The coming is going to happen. Here's a sign. Here's what's going to happen leading up to it. Here's the sign itself. Here's what's going to happen when the Son of Man comes. But this is really just another way of talking about the day of the Lord, which is a concept that is well established in the Old Testament. The day of the Lord is the day the Lord comes in judgment. And this can happen on a personal level. It can happen on a community level. It can happen on a national level. And one day, it will happen on a worldwide level. There will be a worldwide, one time for all time, at the end of time, day of the Lord that will occur at the end of history. But that is not what he's talking about here. He's talking about the coming of the Son of Man, or the day of the Lord in judgment on the Temple of Jerusalem, which will happen at the hands, in the army in question this time will be the Romans. In the days of Isaiah, it was the Babylonians. The Babylonians themselves are going to be judged for it afterwards. Okay. And all those nations that we read about in the Old Testament, Edom, Moab, Ammon, the Midianites, Babylon, Assyria, Phoenicia, Tyre, Sidon, like they all have their own day of the Lord. And by this point in time in the New Testament, most of those nations are gone. They have their day of the Lord, and they're a fact of history at this point. And that will happen to the Jews as well in about 48 years from the time Jesus is speaking. And then he's calling it here the coming of the Son of Man, and giving them the signs of the coming and the conditions leading up to that. But it's a day of the Lord. It's the same concept as we saw in the Old Testament referring to the day of the Lord. And the day of the Lord is a day of judgment against those who are against God, and a day of salvation for his people. You may be one of his people and may physically die on the day of the Lord. Revelation will give us a lot of examples of that, a lot of imagery about that. But the day of the Lord is a day of salvation for the righteous and judgment for the wicked. And in this case, it's going to be a day of the Lord against the Jewish state that rejected Jesus, rejected all of his prophets. And as he said at the end of chapter 23, in the immediate lead up to this context here, it's all going to come down on their heads. All that blood shed by them, the rejection of the prophets of God that he said to them over and over, is going to come down on their heads. And by the end of this generation, by the time these people are gone, it'll happen. And this is not talking about something that is still to come at the end of the actual world. That is not what this is. It's the end of their world. You could say that. It's the end of their world, but it is not the end of the world. Now here's one of the things that gets people confused. This next set of verses is one of the things that trips us up and makes us think he's talking about the end of the world. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect in the four winds, from one end of the earth to the other. Again, he's not talking about the end of the world here. He's talking about his coming in judgment against the nation of Israel in the form of the Roman army. In terms of the angels gathering his elect, we saw him do this already in the book of Ezekiel. In the book of Ezekiel, he has his angels go through the city and mark people. Let's see here. Ezekiel 9, he's having this vision, and it's been going on. He's being shown, he's in Babylon, he's having a vision of Jerusalem, he's having a vision of idolatry in the temple. But there are some who are not engaging in this idolatry. So Ezekiel 9, starting in verse 3. Now the glory of the God of Israel went up above the cherubim where it had been, and moved to the threshold of the temple. Then the Lord called to the man clothed in linen, who had the writing kit at his side, and said to him, so an angel with a writing kit, and said to him, go throughout the city of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. And as I listened, he said to the others, so there were other here besides this one who had the writing kit. He's going to use his writing kit to mark people. And the others who follow him are saying, these are their instructions. God says to them, follow him through the city and kill without showing pity or compassion, slaughtering old men, young men, and maidens, women and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were in front of the temple. So those who had the mark were protected from the judgment that was to come. They may have physically died. Some of them may have. But God was going to keep them safe. We'll see this again in Revelation, where the souls of those who were slain for the gospel, for the sake of the gospel, are kept safe under the altar in heaven. So these angels are not going around to literally scoop people up from earth and take them away. That is not what this is happening. They're going around to keep people safe from this coming judgment. I believe in this context it refers specifically to the Christians who are still in the territory at this time to get out before the invasion actually happened. Like I said in the last video, there was an initial invasion. Oh, what is his name? I had it looked up. It is Gaius Cestius Gallus. He was the governor of Syria, which was a province north of Israel, and he was the one who was tasked with leading the first invasion into Judea and putting down the rebellion there in 66 A.D. He was not an experienced military man. He did surround the city and came close to capturing it, and if he had, the war would have been over right then and there, but he didn't. He backed out and ran away. Of course, this empowered the Jews, then they chased his army, his legion, and destroyed the 12th Legion. And then Rome, of course, got mad and sent the rest of their army to take out Judea. And the smart people left. The Judeans who were in this country knew what was about to happen, and the smart ones left, including the Christians. They knew that Rome was not going to take the loss of the 12th Legion lightly, and where they were going to pay back triple for everything they had lost. So the ones who knew that, the smart ones who saw what was going to happen, left when they had the chance. And I believe that's really what is being talked about here. But one way or another, this idea of the angels gathering the elect does not mean they're going to literally scoop them up from the earth and keep them safe from the fighting. Now, learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. That was happening to them right now. Remember, we had that lesson about the fig tree a couple chapters ago. Its leaves were coming out. It was in March, Passover season. Summer was near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth. This generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. So everything he just got done talking about, from the time we started verse 4 and it said Jesus answered, okay, he's answering their question. From that moment up until now, everything he has said is something that's going to happen within that generation. There will still be some people alive at the time these things happen who were alive when Jesus was predicting this. Okay? That's going to happen, and like I said, it's going to happen in about 40 years. Most of the apostles probably won't be alive still by then, but some people will be. There will be some people, maybe not these four men. We know that there were the men, John would have been. But Peter, Andrew, and James certainly was, and we read about his martyrdom in Acts itself. Peter probably wasn't. He probably died a few years before. I don't know about Andrew. John did live beyond that. So there will be some people in this generation who are alive when Jesus is talking, who will still be alive when these events happen. Again, it's 40 years from now, so most of them won't be. Most of the adults at the time probably will have died off by then, but not all of them. There will be some alive, some people who were alive when Jesus is saying this message, who will still be alive when these things actually happen in about 40 years. So everything he said, from verse 4 when it says Jesus answered, up until now, is all going to be fulfilled in that 40-year time frame. And again, some of it's going to be covered in the New Testament itself. And you can read other historical sources from the first century, Jewish and Roman sources from the first century, that will fill in the blanks about the other stuff. The works of Flavius Josephus in particular will cover a lot of this. Okay, he was actually part of that war. He was involved in it on both sides. He was drafted to be a leader in the Jewish army until he got captured. Then he was put to work as a translator for the Roman army when they were besieging Jerusalem. And so he saw all this happen, and he documents it very extensively. So this is all a fact of history. None of this is left to be fulfilled in the future at this point in time. This is all stuff that's still that has happened and does not still have to happen. Now, when the rest of the New Testament was being written, this stuff hadn't happened yet. Some of it was happening. Some of it was going on at that time. But they hadn't all actually happened yet. We'll have to keep that in mind as we read the rest of the New Testament and understand that these events that are occurring, the epistles that are being written, and the rest of the New Testament are being written on the background, in the context of these things happening, and the Christians at the time still waiting for this sign for these things to be fulfilled. They may legitimately have thought in the first generation of Christianity that Christ would actually return at that time. They may have thought that. I don't know. Okay? There's, I think, enough clues in the epistles and maybe even in the book of Acts to indicate that they may well have thought that when Jesus came in judgment against Israel, it was going to be the end of the world. It did not turn out to be, of course. But they may have legitimately thought that, at least some of them may have. And we'll read about that when we read the epistles and we talk about some of those things. But these things have happened. From our perspective today, these things are all over and done with. They've happened. There's nothing left in this section yet to be fulfilled. And the days that they were speaking, of course, they hadn't happened. In the days when the New Testament was being written, they hadn't all happened yet. But in our context, 2,000 years later, these things have all happened. We are not yet waiting for any of these things to still happen. So I tell you the truth. This generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So my words will outlast this age. This age that they're talking about, heaven and earth, the current configuration of heaven and earth will pass away. But his word will never pass away. So his word is certain. This is going to happen. The temple is going to fall. The age is going to come to an end. But my words will not. Now here's another thing that trips us up. This next verse is also important because this trips us up too and makes us think he's talking about the end of the world. So he goes on to say, no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So he can't actually answer the question specifically about when this is going to happen. They asked him that. They asked him, when will this happen? He said, I don't know. I don't have that information. In this body on earth, I haven't been given that information. I know what signs to look for, and I can tell you the things to look for. But if you're asking me about the exact day and time, I don't know. I haven't been given that information by my Father. Only the Father knows that. Now, this confuses us, because we assume he has to be talking about a future event. Because we know when this happened. This happened in the summer of 70 AD. In particular, like I said before, I think the temple itself fell on August 9th in our calendar, 70 AD. Well, that seems just, we can't accept that. That means that we know something that Jesus here doesn't know, claims not to know. Jesus himself says here, and you see a footnote down here saying some manuscripts don't have that phrase, for the Son. People had a hard time with that even then. Not all the manuscripts included that phrase. It probably was legitimate, and copiers probably just didn't like it, so they didn't include it. Because it seems weird to suggest that we know a bit of information that Jesus at this time doesn't know. So we then we think to ourselves, well, this has to be referring to some future thing that hasn't happened yet. Otherwise, I know more than Jesus does. I know when this event took place, and when Jesus is speaking here, he claims that he doesn't know what's going to take place. I can't handle that, so I have to assume then that this is referring to something that hasn't happened yet. But this is talking about the fall of Jerusalem, okay? We haven't shifted the discussion of the context of the discussion. And he is saying that, so he's answering their first question here. When will this happen? He's saying, I don't know. I know it's going to happen within this generation. He just said that. I know what the sign is and what's going to happen leading up to it. But if you're asking me for the day and hour, I can't tell you that. Only the Father has that information. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. This is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. When the day of the Lord comes, which is what the coming of the Son of Man is, the day of the Lord, it'll be like this. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with the handmill. 1 will be taken, and the other left. Now, a lot of preaching today on this is another thing that we get wrong. A lot of preaching today on this paragraph makes it seem like the good people are the ones being taken away. We kind of go back to that whole angels will gather you, like snatching. That's where the rapture comes from. Like they're going to snatch you away up into heaven and keep you safe. That's not actually it at all. In fact, that's exactly the opposite from what Jesus himself just said. It's going to be like in the days of Noah when the bad people, the wicked people, were swept away in the flood. So the ones being swept away here are the ones who are being swept away in the judgment, not the ones who are being taken up to heaven to be protected from it. So again, another part of this discourse that is often misrepresented in teaching today. Therefore, keep watch. Now, at this point, we do start shifting the conversations forward slowly towards the events yet to come. Up until this point, we've been talking exclusively about the fall of the temple and the coming of the Son of Man on the state of Israel, the day of the Lord on the Jewish state, which is to come in about 40 years. And that's still going to be the primary context for the next couple of paragraphs. But as we go on here, from now and into Matthew 25, we are going to be kind of slowly shifting our focus from that specific thing to, first of all, more general things and down the road, and then finally at the end, the very end, the final judgment at the end of Matthew 25. So keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. And that is true in general, okay? That was true for this time. They didn't know the day. Jesus himself claimed he didn't know the day. So keep watch, okay? He gave you plenty of signs. He gave you what to look for. He gave you what to be prepared for. So keep watch for these things. He may not have told you the exact hour and day, but he told you enough to know, for you to know what to look for and to keep watchful. And that's true for this coming of the Son of Man, regardless of when that coming comes. For the day of the Lord in general. We saw this all throughout the Old Testament. Even Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, Sodom and Gomorrah got attacked by the kings from the east a few years before they were finally destroyed by God in the fire and brimstone. Even Sodom and Gomorrah had an advanced warning of judgment in the forms of hostile kings from the east that came a few years before the final judgment occurred. Nineveh, God wanted Jonah to go to Nineveh and preach to them that God was going to overthrow them. Okay, he didn't let Abraham move into the land when he first got there and take up permanent residence, because he was going to give the people there several hundred more years' time to repent. Some of them were still pretty good. Abraham dealt with Abimelech, and there were still some people in the land at that time who were not totally engulfed in evil. By the time the Israelites came back again, it was time for the people there to be judged. So keep watch. When the day of the Lord comes, those who are ready, it'll be a day of deliverance for those who are ready for it. It will be a day of judgment for those who are not. And you may not know what day that's going to come. They didn't know. Even Jesus said he didn't know. But you can be ready for it. Just because you don't know the exact day doesn't mean you can't be ready for it. But you can be, and you should be. And you should always keep watch. Because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. Now, he's still talking specifically about the coming of the Son of Man on Israel. But this does apply to any coming of the day of the Lord. But understand this. If the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready. For the Son of Man will come in an hour when you do not expect him. Who then, and now he's going to talk about more general judgments. Okay, so now we're shifting the conversation from that specific act of the day of the Lord, the coming of the Son of Man and judgment on Israel, to a more general purpose, coming of the Son of Man or day of the Lord. Just whenever. Okay, always be ready, whether it's this particular coming of the Son of Man or any other. The Son of Man may be coming on America pretty soon. Be ready, be watchful. He may be coming on you. Each of us has to face our own day of the Lord sooner or later. Are you going to be ready? Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. I tell you the truth, he'll put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked, and says to himself, my master is staying away a long time. And he then begins to beat his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and in an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces, and assign him the place of the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, you can't exactly weep or gnash your teeth if you've been cut to pieces. So he's going to cast him out. He's going to be outside the community. This goes back to the judgment on sinners in the Old Testament Israel days, to be cast out of the community. Sometimes they were just cast to death, and sometimes they were cut off. They were just removed. On the Day of Atonement, they had two sacrificial animals. One was killed, one was just outright killed, and one was cast away, sent into the wilderness. So this guy's going to be cut to pieces, and then I guess the rest of him is going to be thrown into the darkness. You have both the cutting off, the killing, and the cutting off in terms of excommunication. Whew, that's Matthew 24. Now we got Matthew 25 to go through. This should be a little bit easier because we don't have to explain the historical context to as great a degree, because we're going to be shifting a conversation away from a specific historical event and more to a general purpose, be ready for the coming of the Son of Man teaching.